Hi everyone, welcome back. I am super excited to talk about today's topic as it's kind of, what fueled my passion to do my capstone at Hemby, my bread and butter. I'm super excited. But I also think that ADA and universal design are something that everyone should be educated about. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, like I just said, we're going to be talking about ADA, which, if you don't know, stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, and also Universal Design, which I will refer to as Universal Design Model, or UD throughout this PowerPoint. So, what exactly is ADA? So, as I said, it stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, which is a federal civil rights law that prohibits the discrimination against people with disabilities in everyday activities. So, ADA prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability, just like other civil rights laws prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, sex, nationality, age, or religion. So ADA kind of guarantees that people with disabilities have the same opportunities as everyone else to enjoy the aspects of their lives, such as, using employment buildings, grocery stores, government, and community facilities. So we talk about, the discrimination against people with disabilities, but what do they qualify or quantify a disability as? So according to ADA, a person with a disability is someone who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, or has a history of a record of some impairment. So this can be like being in remission for cancer, something that happened, but maybe you can't necessarily tell by looking at them, or is a disability is perceived by others as having an impairment. So this can be something like visible burn scars, deformities, being in a wheelchair, those kinds of things. So an important thing to note when discussing ADA is that employers, state and local governments, especially businesses that are open to the public, commercial facilities, transportation providers, telecommunication companies, all have to follow requirements of ADA. So since ADA is the law, following it or not is not really an option for businesses or government buildings. They have to follow it. It's something that, is important for people to be able to use their facilities. So in 2010, the 2010 ADA Standards for Accessible Design was published. And this is just kind of, a set minimum requirements for newly designed and constructed or altered state and local government facilities, public accommodations, and commercial facilities to be readily accessible to and usable by individuals with disabilities. So this is the current standards that we follow today. So as I kind of discussed in the last module with the capstone objectives, these are the ADA compliance standards that I will be evaluating and kind of keeping in mind when going through different buildings at Hemby. Since Hemby was built in the 80s, a lot of the ADA and universal design components were not considered when they built it because it obviously didn't happen until the 90s. Like ADA wasn't enacted until the 1990s, so it wasn't a thing back then. So a lot of, the buildings themselves are not compliant with ADA, and that's kind of what I'll be doing is evaluating them and seeing how, we can modify them or, possibly completely change them to be as accessible as possible. So now that we've talked about ADA for a little bit, we're going to get into universal design. So universal design is the design and composition of an environment so that it can be accessed, understood, and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of their age, size, ability, or disability. So in short, any environment, whether it be a building, playground, outdoor facility, whatever, should be designed to meet the needs of all people that use it. So when we think about Hemby, not only should it be designed to meet the needs of all the children that use it, whether it be typically developing children or children with diverse abilities, but it should also be able to be used by the community when they come in on a Sunday fun day, or they rent it out on the weekends. Everybody that has access to it should be able to use it. So, we are going to talk a little bit about the 7 principles of universal design. It looks like a lot. I'm going to try to keep it as digestible as possible, but I just kind of want to get into what it actually means and what it looks like. So, in order to kind of better understand the 7 principles as we go through them, I want you guys to think of a door handle. That's what we're going to kind of use as an example. So, think about a traditional door knob, the circular one that you turn, versus a quote unquote universal design handle, which is like the L-shaped lever one that you just kind of like pull down. So we're going to start up here at the top with equitable use. So that is the first principle. Basically just saying that the design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. So for the door handle, it needs to be able to be used by a variety of abilities. So a typical round doorknob is not accessible to everyone, because if you think about, if you don't have the best grip strength, whether it's because of a injury, something that you were born with, a stroke, anything like that, or even if you don't have, maybe you don't have hands or you don't have an arm or whatever it is, you wouldn't be able to open a typical circular round doorknob. Versus the L-shaped doorknob, the lever kind of doorknob, you would be able to open that. You could do it with your wrist, you could do it with the palm of your hand, you could do it with your elbow, honestly, even your foot if you needed to. So that is principle 1, equitable use. So we're going to go clockwise to flexibility and use. This just kind of is saying that the design accommodates a wide range of individuals, preferences, abilities, anything like that. So an L-shaped door handle can be used by, you can push it up, you can push it down, you can use your hand, you can use your foot, you can use your elbow. Whereas a traditional door knob, you can really only use your hand and really only turn it towards the right to get it open. So principle 3, simple and intuitive design, is pretty much what it sounds like. Can you look at it and figure it out? So even if you've never seen it before, an L-shaped door handle is pretty easy to just think like, oh, I push it down, the door opens, versus a knob, sometimes can be a little bit hard. Sometimes you turn it to the right, like you think it's going to open that way, and you got to kind of fight with the door. So an L-shaped handle is typically the most intuitive and easier, for everyone to use. Even if you think about a little kid, they know they just grab it and pull it down. So principle number 4 is perceptible information. So this is just that the design communicates the necessary information effectively to the user. So regardless of your cognitive ability, your sensory ability, whatever kind of ability or disability that you have, you're still able to figure out and get the door open, even if you have some type of, sensory preference that might inhibit you from doing that. Maybe you don't like to touch things with your hands or that texture, whatever, you can still get the door open in a different way. So principle number 5 is tolerance for error. This is the purple one down here for following along clockwise. So that's just that the design minimizes hazards and adverse consequences, or like accidental or unintended actions. So typically the first thought here with a doorknob is, can you accidentally lock yourself in the room? Things like that. So universal design for the door handle, it's a lot easier to lock yourself in a room with a knob versus a lever. And it's a lot easier to kind of like pull off a door handle that's a knob and get stuck versus like a lever handle. It's kind of harder to, not use it correctly. So the 6th one is low physical effort. So this is something that I think is pretty important. So the design can be used effectively and comfortably with minimal fatigue, so it's not going to cause you to be tired by using it. So when I talk about fatigue for the typical person like myself or whoever, um, thinking about opening a door is not something that I think is going to cost me a lot of effort. It's not going to make me, super tired or anything like that. But if you think about somebody that battles with chronic fatigue, or, maybe they're in a wheelchair and they propel themselves in the wheelchair all day, and then they have to come and put a lot of force to get this door open, with a typical doorknob, that's something that it takes a toll on you after a while. If you're continuously having to do that throughout the day, you're already tired, you're already battling this chronic fatigue. That's just another, inhibiting factor. So low physical effort is really important when it comes to universal design. You want to be able to easily and effectively use the space or whatever it is. So when it comes to the door handle, it's really easy for anybody, regardless of ability or disability, to just push down or push up. Sometimes if you're in a wheelchair, it's easier to push up and get that door open. So lastly, principle 7 is size and space. So this is just kind of the appropriate size and space is provided for the approach, reach, manipulation, and use, kind of regardless of whatever you have going on. So regardless of your body size, your posture, your mobility, whatever it is, allowing every individual or adult, typically abled or disabled, should be able to use the device. So when it comes to a doorknob, that's just making sure that it's the right height on a door, or, it kind of easily turns and you don't really have to pull it really hard, or, we've all had those battles where you're like turning the knob and you really can't get the door open. But just think about having that battle while you're in a wheelchair and you can't get that leverage that you might need to get it open. So obviously, talking about a door handle seems kind of silly, kind of like something that maybe you wouldn't think about, but this is stuff that we have to consider, whether it be big or small, to make it as accessible as possible for everybody that uses the facility. So obviously we talked about universal design and ADA or accessible design, but I want to kind of compare the two because I know that it can be confusing. It's a lot of terminology on, what really is the difference. We're making the facility as accessible as possible. Why do we need to kind of use the different terminology, right? So here's kind of 4 examples of like what universal design would look like and what accessible design would look like. So we're going to start with the first one, home improvement services that incorporate universal design as a basic service. So when you have a home and you have some type of need where you would need an accommodation, that's typically like an additional fee, an additional something that you have to have, where to the right here, home modification services by a contractor who charges more for her specialized knowledge of design for disability and aging. So it's not typically something that's considered when you're building a house or when you buy a house. It's something that is added on. So if you think about universal design, that would be something that's just like included when you buy or build a house. Like it's just already there. It's already something that anybody could use the house. It's not something that needs to be, you buy the house and then add the additional thing. So if we move to the second one, universal design would be automobile instruments and controls customizable to accommodate differences in perceptual abilities, stature, motor abilities, and preferences. So this would be if you're buying a car, it's already included. Again, it's already there. It's like, okay, you need this. Let's, get it to fit you. No extra charge, not something that you need to add or anything like that. Like it's there, it's an option. You just have to say, yes, I want that. Versus assistive technology used to adapt an automobile display for people with special needs. So this is more like, okay, yeah, like we'll get that for you. We'll put that in there. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. Your insurance might not cover it. Those kinds of things. So it's not as inclusive. It's more something you have to ask about. It's not something that's just going to be there for you to use. So let's move on to the third one. A no step building entry that everybody can easily use, and it's there for everyone. So this is something, again, you're going to a doctor's office, there's no curb, there's no weird footing, anybody can use it, whether you're in a wheelchair, you have low vision, you even if you're just clumsy, it's not something you have to worry about your footing. Versus the accessible design would be that, okay, yes, this building has a ramp, but it's around the back side. You kind of have to look to find it. You have to ask about it. It's not just like you're a typical person and you can use this building when there's no step entry like the universal design. And lastly, a hotel that has 100% universally designed rooms in a variety of types. So this is a hotel where every single room is universally designed. There's different ones, but at the minimum, regardless of what you have going on, you have a universally designed room that you can use. Versus the accessible design is a hotel that only the coded required percentage of accessible rooms is used. So that basically just means that you might have this huge hotel, but only 10 of the 100 rooms are accessible, quote unquote. So they're just meeting their quota because they have to. And it, again, might not be even the type of accommodations that you need in that room. It might be handicap accessible or, whatever it is, but it might not meet the needs that you have. So that's just something that I kind of want to point out. Obviously, I'm hoping that as we talk about this more, the differences between universal design and accessible design or ADA are kind of becoming more obvious, a little bit, sticking out a little bit more. But I don't want you guys to think that either design is, better or worse. Sometimes we have to adapt already existing spaces. Sometimes we don't have the option to universally design a space. We don't have the ability to tear it down and start from scratch. So when we think about Hemby, we probably won't have the ability or the funding to kind of tear it down and start over, right? So we're going to have to use both ADA, accessible design, kind of concepts, but also use universal design when we can. So this is kind of my process of what I'll be going back and forth and seeing, what can we do, what can we adapt, what can we modify, and which either universal design or ADA kind of fits better for what we need. Okay, so this might be my favorite slide, but just kind of talking about why Hemby. So, working as an after school and summer camp counselor, I just saw a need for an update for the facility to become more inclusive. And I think with that, providing education to staff on different ways to incorporate children with diverse abilities. So, not only did I see this as an opportunity during summer camp, but also during after school. We have those kids with autism or ADHD or, stuff like that, where, participating and playing games is fun until it's not. And I think we need some education on like how to keep these kids entertained, interactive with other kids while also being safe, following rules and all that kind of stuff. And I just saw, a great opportunity for education within, our staff. So another thing that stood out to me, and this has kind of been my tagline for why I'm so passionate about this, is the mission statement of the YMCA. So we all know, or if we don't, that's okay. The mission statement is helping all people reach their God-given potential in spirit, mind, and body. So the thing that stood out to me the most was helping all people, helping all people reach their God-given potential, but not all people can use the facilities. That was the thing that stuck out to me the most. How can we say that, we want to help all people when not everybody can use the facility? So that's why I kind of focus more on ADA compliance and stuff like that. And working with Dodger, that is something that he's passionate about as well. So we're really excited to kind of start this process, start this journey, and hopefully, fingers crossed, get some funding to be able to make some changes. And lastly, one of the things that I kind of also felt was important was that if we have a summer camp um, for children with special needs or diverse abilities, I think it is absolutely possible to carry that into after school. I don't think we need to completely separate that. I think obviously Camp Boomerang is great. We need to keep Camp Boomerang. We need to keep Camp Eagle Rock. But I think after school, we can absolutely accommodate for some of our Camp Boomerang kids to come to after school as well. So, in the next slide, we're going to talk about some of the research that I did on the benefits of inclusion of children with diverse abilities with their typically developing peers. Okay, so this is a little bit of my nerdy section, so bear with me. But I'm just going to be talking about the research that I found that kind of backs up, the point that I'm trying to make. So I have a couple different articles that I'll link below if you guys really want to read them. But in short, I have 4 different points that I'm trying to make. So the first one is that within the research, it showed that environmental restrictions inhibit children with diverse abilities opportunities to participate and be included in daily activities. So, whether this be at school, at the grocery store, playing sports, anything like that, their environments are already restricted as it is. So, having, a place to go, yes, they probably love coming to after school, but it is still not as inclusive and accessible as it could be. So there's still some restrictions there. So if we do, ultimately make it as accessible and as inclusive as possible, it is just becomes even more of a safe space for them to be able to participate and, not be excluded. So another point that I don't know is common knowledge is that for children with diverse abilities, it's more difficult for them to be socially accepted by their peers, by their typically developing peers. So it can make daily interactions stressful and emotional and kind of like anxiety provoking. So if we provide them with the experience of regularly, having those relationships, building those relationships, and having opportunities to participate in games or, unstructured and structured play with their peers, it can help them be, 1, more accepted by their peers, and 2, have less of an emotional reaction when things are going on with their typically developing peers. So, third, children with diverse abilities need more opportunities to provide them the ability to problem solve, to interact with their peers in both a structured and unstructured way. So structured and unstructured is, like we talk about structured games, they're great. We want to have structured play, but also unstructured play, that time where someone's doing homework and they're just kind of playing while you wait. That's great too. That builds confidence, that allows them to kind of interact with their peers in a way that they might not normally do. And then also we want to foster them to be able to practice their social and emotional regulation skills. So if you don't know, a lot of times children with diverse abilities, not only do they have their quote unquote like diverse ability diagnosis, but they also have associated behavior issues, emotional regulation difficulties, stuff like that. So it's not typically just the one diagnosis, but there's associated behaviors with it. So if we provide them the opportunity to, get frustrated in a game, how are we going to help them problem solve their feelings in a positive way, in a positive environment? So giving them the practice to do that. And lastly, this is just one article, but I found a lot of research to back this up. But the research kind of showed and found that there's a positive influence on the typically developing children's attitudes when we incorporate and include children with diverse abilities. So, and that's in an after school or summer camp environment. So not only is it positive for the children with diverse abilities, but it's also positive for the typically developing children as well. So the overall point that I'm trying to make is that there is tons of research and evidence to support the inclusion of children with diverse abilities with their typically developing peers in an after school program type setting. So it obviously supports both the typically developing children and the children with diverse abilities. And I think that this is fully something that's feasible and possible. Um, and obviously, is there a lot of work that we need to put in to allowing this to happen? Yes, absolutely. It's not going to be easy, but it's fully possible. So I think it's something that, as we go along, as we get more educated on the different diagnoses, the different ways that we as counselors can support these kids, it's just going to be a great overall safe, enriching environment for all types of children. So, lastly, again, here's my contact information. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Thanks for tuning in this week. I know it was a little bit longer, but I'll try to keep them pretty short. I just had a lot to cover today. But I look forward to the next couple of modules, and I hope you guys are enjoying it and learning. I'm having a lot of fun with it, so feel free to reach out with any questions or comments, and I'll see you guys in the next module. Bye.